Hi, I'm Nick Bowling. I'm the director of Man of La Mancha.
Hi, I'm Rosilie Hernández. I'm an associate professor of Spanish at the University of Illinois at Chicago, and I'm a consultant for Man of La Mancha. So the novel basically traces the journey, as Nick said, of a crazy man who has read too many books and therefore believes that he has become a knight, and goes out into the world dressed as a knight. And Sancho Panza is kind of his sidekick. He convinces a neighbor to go on this quest with him. And they go for an 800-page journey, basically.
Right. And find all sorts of fun, crazy little stories along the way, chasing windmills that Quixote believes are ogres, or trying to find the beautiful woman that he thinks he's in love with, etc. It's telling the story of Cervantes' Quixote, which everybody is somewhat familiar with, but it's telling it with a bookend. The musical bookend is that Cervantes himself, the writer himself, is in a prison holding cell awaiting the Inquisition in 16th century Spain. And so in order to save himself from the other prisoners in that holding cell, he has to convince them what kind of man he is, and he does it by telling them the story of Quixote. So that's sort of the bookend of the show, and we come back to that holding cell, to that prison, many times throughout the show.
So that one of the ideas of the novel is how we play roles, how we take on roles in order to survive our reality. And this is basically the thrust, as I've seen in rehearsals, no, of this play, which is that in order to survive the prison, Cervantes, or one way to see it is that in order to survive the prison and everything that is happening within this space, these characters, the prisoners, take on these new roles or these new personas.
Our big idea on this production was, what if this holding cell is set in modern day, and all of the prisoners are not some kind of ancient in some kind of ancient hole that is hard to understand, the basement of a castle with people in rags, that it's hard to understand sort of who those people are, but to make the prisoners people that are familiar to us, that feel like they could almost be one of us here. That was the thrust from the beginning, and that led us to this idea that the whole bookend would be modern and in this kind of strange holding cell, which feels very real in some ways, but very magical things end up happening through storytelling in this show.
You know, with period pieces, the audience tends to focus so much on, you know, the period, no, the costuming and the makeup and the mannerisms and so on and so forth. So here it's kind of in this kind of minimalist modern setting, you get to not have to pay attention to that sort of stuff, to all this kind of extra stuff, and really more focus on the story itself, the story of these people that find themselves entrapped and somehow escape through this story of Don Quixote. And then what becomes a lot more relevant is these two things that they're having to deal with, their reality and the imaginary world that they're building together, right? And how they have to be convinced, many of the prisoners have to be convinced to move from this reality that is what they know to this imaginary world that Cervantes, the author on the stage, is giving them, no, this gift of a story to live and somehow to escape their reality. Well, you know, the thing about history is that everything changes and nothing changes, right? We all are the same human beings throughout history, and we also have the same needs for the same basic types of clothing, the same basic type of tools, and so on and so forth. So, you know, for me, this passage into a setting that is a modern setting never struck me as somehow hard or or that it would really change the essence of both the play as it was written in the 60s and the novel as it was written in the earlier, or as it was published in the early 17th century.